Best friend since we were really young. Always had crushes on each other off and on. In high school, our timing was awful, and we never ended up dating, but we did make a marriage pact if we were both single at 30 years old, we'd getting married. Some years passed. We moved away from each other, grew distant, dated other people. Long story short, we're now back in each other's lives, and I'm reasonably sure we're going to make good on the pact earlier than originally anticipated. When we were 25, one of my best friends and I decided that at 35 we'd get married if we were still single. She moved back to the same town I lived in a year later, and I realized I loved her too much to wait until 35. Been together 2 years now, we're getting married next week. I had an uncle who did this with a girl for when they turned 35. They turned 35 and laughed it off, but ended up dating instead. A few years later they got married. And AMP, #X200B. I think most who do it are already interested in the other, they just don't want to admit it yet. Edit. Since this got a ton of response, I asked my uncle's wife for the full story. They were both amused, and my uncle also texted the family group chat to brag they were Reddit famous, which led to many middle-aged people confused about what Reddit was. Anyways, they made the deal in college. They barely kept in touch after college, however. She moved back to the city, and met back up through old friends. That's when they began to get closer, and joke about the whole 35 thing once more. For his birthday, instead of having party, he just invited her out for dinner, which led her to joke, "Oh, are you going to propose?" And they laughed, but during dinner they started discussing what it would look like if they started dating. Within the month they began. My friend and I got drunk one night, and said if we're single in 5 years let's get married. 5 years later we got married, dated for 2 years before that, just celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary, and have a baby girl, and an amazing life. I made this pact with my best friend in high school. Several years down the road we ended up being together, but long before the time frame was up. We will be married next year. I've made a pact with 2 people, and neither of them know. I made a baby pact with a friend, i.e. if I hit a certain age that I now can't remember he would impregnate me. I knew we wouldn't be good together romantically, but he was a solid best friend, and would have been a great dad. It was also a safety net for me that helped me leave an abusive relationship. I had been convinced that no one else would ever love me, and I'd never be a mom. Anyway, he ended up introducing me to my now husband, who I have a child with, while he is married to someone far better suited to his personality than me. So I'd say it worked out for the best for everyone. My best friend growing up and I made this pact. We were 13 to 14 at the time. The pact was if we didn't marry anyone by 30, we would marry each other. A few years later, we moved it to 25. By the time we were 19 to 20 we started dating. We got married at 22. Just celebrated our 3rd anniversary. In my early 20s, I would hook up with this chick here and there. We were actually pretty good friends, but we never really hung out outside of social groups. Which is a shame. She was fun as hell, and we always kind of found ourselves in the corner ignoring the group. Anyways, we made a pact that if we weren't in a relationship by 30, we would get married. Turns out she got back with her ex. It's been 10 years, and she reminded me of our marriage pact. I had completely forgotten. We're both married now, to other people. We still talk here and there. And sometimes she tells me that she thinks we would have made a great couple, so I worry that she's not too happy where she is. I haven't seen her in person in years. Edit. I guess I should add to the "I worry she's not happy where she is" statement. We're both 35. She's married, 2 kids, stay-at-home mom. Great husband, he just works about 80 hours a week. I am married, no kids. Wife is full-time student, I work full-time. We have the ability to up and move and do whatever, short of grad school. We travel when we can, which is pretty frequently. We just up and moved to another state for my wife to start her grad school program. Grass is greener, you know? I mean, for both of us. I have wondered where my life would be if I was to get married and have kids when I was younger. I'm sure she wonders about traveling the world at the drop of a hat and not being tied down to any place in particular. We both reminisce about the easier days of when we worked together, would make money on a night shift at the restaurant, and would go blow it at the bar hanging out with everyone. And we have never really stopped chatting. I was invited to her wedding. Her husband knows we chat. My wife knows we chat. Had this happen with a best friend of mine, she said if both of us were single at 35, we'd get married to each other. 2 years later, I ask her out. She is taken aback, ghosts me for a year, then invites me to her wedding. I had no hard feelings, so went anyways. He's gay now. My wife said she made this pact with a guy who took it seriously, I guess. We went to high school together, so I know of him, and he randomly calls 10 years later, and asked my wife if she is still with me. She said yes, and he hung up, and we haven't heard since, LOL. That I know of anyway, always that 1% chance of something. I now, late 30 SF, made a joke marriage pact with a gay male friend back in '99, or so, before gay marriage was legal. Promised to marry before 40. We both got married this year. To different men with the same first name. So not quite what was asked, but we're amused. I find this frequently asked question fascinating because until I encountered Reddit, I had never heard of this practice. We're married with a newborn. When we were both 19, when we made a pact to marry each other at 35 if we're both single. We started dating at 24, married at 29, and now with a newborn at 31. Yeah, we made a pact when we were 18 to get married if we were both single at 30. We were not dating. Jumped the gun a bit, I suppose, and married at 24 years old. 7 years and 5 kids later, and I don't regret it one bit. Made this agreement at 16 to marry at 35. We started dating at 26, and it'll be 2 years next week. She wants to get married a little earlier than 35 now. I made a marriage pact with a friend when we were /10. If neither of us were married by 25, we would get hitched. She became a massive drug addict, and I'm dating someone much better, so bullet dodged. I on and off dated a wonderful woman for a few years. Commitment was always kind of on off, and we both dated other people during this time. Things were exacerbated by us both being single parents. Mine were quite a bit older than hers, even though she was older than me. We were always quite close. When we were dating, we'd talk about our respective partners. No jealousy whatsoever. We ended up as FWB for a while. One night, speaking on MSN IRC, we made a pact that if we both hit 40, and neither of us were married, then we would get hitched. TBH, for quite some time I thought we actually would get married. During one of our drier spells, I was at her house fixing her washing machine, and her sister popped in to say hi. Well, not only did she look amazing, but I could tell she was checking me out, but I left it at that. More talking online, and I joke with her that I'm going to bed her sister, and she jokes back that I should try if I want, but that her sis is married and very happy. Turns out, not as happy as everyone thought. Very abusive husband. Very long story cut short, I've been married to her sister for 4 years now. She did not take the news well to start off with, but that's mostly because I broke the news in such a cuntish way because I was drunk and thought it was funny. We all get along like a house on fire. Her parents, after the initial shock, have been wonderfully accepting, as has her whole family. I'm lucky to be a part of it. Edit https://dictionary. Cambridge. org/dictionary/English/get on like a house on fire. Apparently this idiom hasn't made it over to the States. It means we all get along great. I did this with a friend when I was in my late teens/early 20s. We said we would get married at 30. She was gay. I was straight. I moved for university, and we saw each other less and eventually drifted apart. I don't go back to my hometown very often, but the last I heard, about 8 or 9 years ago, she had become a nurse, found a husband and had a kid. I'm 36 now, and I don't feel like I have grown up one iota, and I haven't had a relationship that has lasted longer than 3 months. I try not to measure my life against the traditional metrics of marriage, money and kids, but I sometimes feel like I have done things very wrong.